They thought they could get away with it. A group of racist teenagers harassed an elderly black man, targeting not just him, but his pride, the garden he had poured his heart and soul into. What they didn't realize was that this wasn't just a patch of flowers. This was his sanctuary, a symbol of his resilience after a life of trials, including years of military service. They thought he was powerless, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. The late afternoon sun bathed the small house in a golden hue, casting long shadows over the vibrant garden that surrounded it. The yard was a masterpiece, filled with marigolds, towering sunflowers, and delicate lavender that swayed gently in the breeze. Passers-by often slowed down to admire the beauty, marveling at the care it took to maintain such a haven. The house itself was modest, its peeling white paint and weathered shutters revealing years of history. Despite its age, the house radiated warmth and pride, a reflection of the man who lived there. Sitting on the porch in an old rocking chair was Ezra Thompson, a retired Army veteran. His hands, dark and callous from decades of hard work and sacrifice, rested on his knees. For Ezra, the garden wasn't just a hobby, it was his therapy. After years of facing destruction and death in the military, tending to his garden gave him a sense of purpose. Here, he could nurture life, a stark contrast to the chaos he had witnessed overseas. As he leaned back in his chair, the rhythmic creak of wood punctuated the serene evening. In the distance, the sound of children's laughter broke the calm. Ezra turned his head to see a group of boys playing basketball near the street corner. He recognized them, the Nelson brothers. They were new to the neighborhood, but their presence had already disrupted its peace. The three brothers were loud, brash, and disrespectful. Ezra had introduced himself shortly after they moved in, offering a basket of tomatoes from his garden. Their mother had accepted them politely, though distractedly. The boys, however, had barely acknowledged him, offering only muttered responses. Since then, Ezra had seen them roam the streets, leaving behind a trail of litter and mischief. At first, their behavior toward him was subtle snickers as they passed his house, whispers, and pointed fingers. Ezra had brushed it off, attributing it to youthful ignorance. But soon, their taunts turned into targeted acts of vandalism. Crushed flowers, broken stems, and trampled plants became a regular sight in his garden. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ezra was startled by a loud thud against his house. Laughter followed, cutting through the quiet. He hurried to the window and saw the Nelson boys in his yard. Their basketball rolled across the grass, crushing a patch of daisies. Ezra stepped onto the porch, his towering frame silhouetted against the light from inside. "Get out of my yard," he said firmly. Darren, the eldest, smirked. "Relax, old man. It's just some flowers." Ezra's eyes narrowed. "Those flowers aren't yours to destroy. Leave now." The boys hesitated for a moment. The youngest, Marcus, looked uneasy, but Darren's mocking grin didn't waver. Finally, with a shrug, Darren turned and walked away, his brothers following reluctantly. Ezra watched them disappear down the street before stepping into his yard to assess the damage. The crushed flowers felt like a personal attack, each broken stem a reminder of the disrespect he faced. The next morning, Ezra rose early, as was his habit. The world was still and quiet, the air cool with dew. As he worked to repair the damage in his garden, the sound of soft footsteps caught his attention. He looked up to see a young girl standing at the edge of his yard, clutching a small pot of flowers. "Hi," she said hesitantly. Ezra straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Hello there. Can I help you?" The girl shifted nervously. I brought these for your garden. I saw what my brothers did. I'm sorry." Ezra's stern expression softened. "What's your name?" "Alicia," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Alicia, those are beautiful flowers. Would you like to help me plant them?" Her eyes widened in surprise, and after a moment, she nodded. Together, they found a spot in the garden. As they worked, Ezra shared stories about his flowers and the memories tied to them. "Every plant here has a story," he explained, patting the soil around the new flowers. "Just like people, they need care and patience to grow strong. Alicia looked thoughtful. Do you think people can grow strong even if no one takes care of them? The question gave Ezra pause. He set down his gloves and met her gaze. Sometimes they can, he said after a moment, but it's much harder. Before Ezra could say more, a sharp voice rang out. Alicia, get over here. Ezra looked up to see Mr. Nelson storming toward them, his face dark with anger. Behind him, the Nelson brothers lingered, their smirks sending a chill through Ezra. What are you doing over here? Mr. Nelson demanded. She was helping me plant a flower, Ezra replied calmly. Mr. Nelson's scowl deepened. Stay away from my kids. Mind your own business. Teaching kindness isn't interference, Ezra said, meeting the man's glare. Darren kicked a loose stone toward the garden. Nice flowers, he sneered. Ezra didn't flinch. He stood tall, watching them retreat. Alicia cast a quick, apologetic glance back at him before following her father. The harassment escalated in the days that followed. The boys vandalized Ezra's garden further, scrawling hateful messages on his fence. Ezra knew he couldn't stay silent. He began knocking on doors, rallying his neighbors to stand together. While some were hesitant, afraid of confrontation, others agreed to support him. They drafted a letter to the Nelson family, demanding accountability. When the letter was delivered, Mr. Nelson exploded with anger. But then, Darren surprised everyone. We've been acting like jerks, he admitted, his voice trembling. I'm sorry. The crowd fell silent, stunned by his admission. Even Mr. Nelson seemed taken aback. Ezra stepped forward, his voice steady. Acknowledging the harm is the first step. The next is making amends. Darren nodded, his gaze dropping to the ground. Alicia stood beside him, her small hand resting on his arm in silent support. That evening, Ezra returned to his garden. The damage was still there, but so was the potential for healing. Kneeling in the soil, he began to plant something new, a symbol of hope and renewal. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained and press the bell icon for more powerful stories. See you in the next tale.